Ah, you love to see it. The media, perhaps in their latest effort to craft irresistible clickbait, or maybe in a legit, actually honest attempt to reflect the reality of what is really going on out there, have crafted a must-read exposé on the life of the modern security guard. And you've got to see it. They are essentially portraying him as the last line of defense in the new post-apocalyptic state of urban decay, aka zombie world, that's firmly ensconced itself within many of America's urban cores. But you first got to see what the media was saying about this exact same officer and his security company just 2 short years ago. Stay tuned. This video is brought to you by the Security Officer Network. Take a moment from being the last line of defense in the post-apocalyptic zombie world and join us at securityofficernetwork.com. Build your portfolio and show your employers and future clients that you are truly a security professional with your portfolio at securityofficernetwork.com. First, for some context. This video is going to contain opinion. These are the opinions of the author. Here's hoping that you are not offended. If you are, please drop your pushback into the comments and convince me that I am not correct. Second, the just-released story by the New York Times is fascinating, not only because of the positive light it puts on the security industry, but because of how especially ironic, considering the negative, and in my view, unfair, media attention that's been given to the exact same innovative security operation in the past. Let me explain. So we all know that overused meme that normally seeks to attract those who are still susceptible to clickbait. The underregulated, lightly trained, over-aggressive security guard who has overstepped his bounds in some way and who is a danger to society. So it probably shouldn't have been surprising when after the Defund the Police articles of 2020 became stale, that some reporters, perhaps savoring a new angle on the lazy, all people in uniform are bad framing. Before that framing lost all credibility, scurried to highlight the concerns about the innovative security officers to whom the traumatized residents of zombie world were turning to for help as a last resort. Case in point, Portland, 2021. At that time, Oregon Public Broadcasting released a multi-part exposé entitled Portland's Private Police, focused on Echelon Protective Services, one of the most fascinating companies in security. Echelon, formed in 2019, provides Portland's beleaguered business owners with some sort of relief from their unfortunate inclusion into zombie world, as the city's overwhelmed police have been unable to perform, resulting in countless hours of wait times for which the business owner eventually decides that it's completely pointless to even call the police in the first place. Instead, they are calling Echelon, and a wide range of business owners have come together to pay for Echelon officers. It's a very creative security product offering that clusters its clients in close proximity, allowing the business owners to potentially share costs, and also allowing Echelon officers to issue trespass warnings and notice of exclusion, inclusive of all of their various clients' properties in the area, at the same time. That said, the trespass warning is the stick to the carrot that is Echelon's public-friendly science of trying to provide help and assistance to those residents of zombie land who want it, such as help finding public shelters, clothes for those who aren't wearing clothes, a real problem, water, granola bars, sunscreen, and even cigarettes. This philosophy notwithstanding, much of Oregon Public Broadcasting's exposé negatively framed the company's work. OPB's reporting didn't appear to provide any actual solution to the crises. It instead negatively framed the officers' alleged clearing of debris, trash, from a homeless encampment that was on a public sidewalk, alleged incomplete incident reports, full context, in my view, not completely provided by OPB, and, perhaps most notably, included an inexplicably irresponsible, overbroad declaration from a local DA official who didn't want to press charges on the crimes observed by Echelon officers. This was the real smoking gun abuse in the OPB report. The DA's seeming, in my personal view, unethical, potential violation of the Equal Protection Clause should have caught the attention of any professional investigative reporter who should have at the very least forced the DA to actually describe a real rational basis, which, in my view, the article did not contain, for the seeming blanket refusal to act on charges requested by Echelon officers. i.e., if there was a scandal to be found, it wasn't the security company. It was probably the DA's office and a DA targeting a specific security company. Basically, whether intentional or not, sending a message: don't hire this one specific security company, because we won't ever press charges against anyone they arrest unless there is someone outside of their organization willing to testify as well. If I were the reporter, this failure of the DA's office would have been my smoking gun investigative report. A discriminatory, blanket policy that punished a single company and its officers, while appearing to not take into account for the individual officer's veracity, again, sans rational basis, a likely violation of the 14th Amendment. Ironically enough, just as the county opened their opulent new Justice Center, and the government officials were set to escape the squalor of the chaos in the street, the report even called out one Echelon officer by name, Michael Bach. Bach allegedly helped to research the material for an investigative report that Echelon put together, a fascinating meld of security and investigations that we will talk about in the next video, like and subscribe, that appeared to have been key to convincing the city to finally do something about a potentially dangerous public sidewalk encampment. OPB then used the circumstances of that investigation to deploy what I think was an extremely clunky attempt to keyhole the reader's perception into suspecting some sort of nefarious relationship existed between the security company and a private citizens group that sought to restore some sort of sanity to downtown. But the expose didn't connect the dots, and thus, in my view, introduced Bach's name for no real reason. Though much of the expose's framing was negative, there certainly wasn't a smoking gun that could be used to significantly offset the clearly positive body of work the company had provided to the beleaguered local business owners, who clearly had very little or no other options than the private security provider. This fact notwithstanding, nor the fact that the report clearly overlooked the real, actual news, the policy of the DA's office, the expose was nominated for the University of Michigan's Livingston Award, an award that purports to honor the best reporting and storytelling by young journalists, an absolute kick in the teeth to those who are on the ground, in the real world, and whose real story needs to be told. Now, 2 years later, the tide has completely turned. According to the New York Times, the security guard is the last line of defense against Portland's societal breakdown. Specifically, Echelon's Michael Bach is profiled as the solution of last resort for a desperate community. The article vividly directs its readers through the post-apocalyptic scape of downtown Portland. It describes the hatchet-wielding transient attacking the man who put his hands on my drugs, the allegedly mentally ill homeless women whose was feared to be attempting to abduct a child, but who the police couldn't do anything about, the fentanyl-addicted zombie who Bach resuscitated and who was using again just an hour later, the local mental health crisis line that disconnects incoming calls, and an overwhelmed public safety infrastructure with an average police response time of nearly an hour. According to the Times, the void is being filled by thousands of private security guards hired by office buildings, coffee shops, stores, schools, and parking lots in what has become one of the country's fastest-growing industries, private security, with annual revenue exceeding $40 billion. The article states that most major U.S. cities now have at least 3 times as many security guards on the street as sworn police officers. The report follows Bach through his day in Zombieland and portrays him as a caring individual who is the last line of defense, someone who is saving lives from overdose, feeding and clothing those in need, helping to prevent children from being kidnapped, and much more. So, is this just clickbait? Or is the media really going to start reflecting the reality of the new situation? Security companies are really the last resort. Here's a theory. It's a bit of both. But, the media's desire for clicks notwithstanding, reality has caught up with the public zeitgeist, and many, even those in the media, whose personal biases are frequently critical of both the private sector and people in uniform, are starting to figure out the foolishness of the past few years. And they understand that security really is the last line of defense. For example, the Times story highlights the actions of a mentally ill man, mostly not wearing clothes, making a scene in street. It describes how these actions attracted the attention of 8 security officers from 5 companies, and then one police officer who simply rolled down his window as he drove by, apologized, and said he couldn't respond now because he had another call to go to. If this is reality on the street, it's really this bad. There are 8 security officers for every one passing police officer who can't even stop to deal with the situation. Then the media has to get on board with the fact that the police aren't going to be back anytime soon. There's too much personal risk to being a police officer in big cities now. And the only halfway viable option is the use of private security. It truly is the last line of defense in many American cities. What do you think? Was the Times story just another attempt by the media to get clicks? Or is this really the new reality? Share your comments below. And if you are ready to join the Society of Professional Security Officer, join us today at theSecurityOfficerNetwork.com. We will see you next time.